Lydia had grown used to the quiet of her home. The small living room, with its soft cream walls and neatly arranged furniture, had become a sanctuary, a space where she could breathe without tension. 2 years had passed since her divorce from Mark, and while the wound wasn't fresh anymore, the memory of her marriage lingered like a shadow she couldn't quite shake. Every corner of her house carried fragments of the life she had once shared, reminders of a love that had faded, and of promises that had been broken. Yet she had adapted. She convinced herself that solitude wasn't loneliness. It was freedom, a space where she could heal and rediscover herself. That evening, she was curled up on the sofa, a book in hand, a half-empty cup of coffee on the table beside her. The sky outside had darkened to a deep blue, and the city hummed softly in the background, a low, constant murmur of life she no longer felt part of. She turned the page, absorbed in the story, when a sharp knock on the door startled her. Lydia frowned, setting the book down, her heart beating a little faster. Who could be visiting her at this hour? The thought of an unexpected guest made her feel a mixture of curiosity and caution. As she walked to the door, her mind wandered to the usual suspects, a delivery, a neighbor, maybe a friend stopping by unannounced, but when she opened it, she froze. Standing on the porch was Ryan, her ex-husband's best friend. He looked calm, collected, yet there was a subtle tension in his posture, as though he carried the weight of words he had been holding back. "Hey, Lydia," he said softly, his voice carrying a warmth that made her chest tighten. "I hope I'm not disturbing you." Lydia blinked, processing his presence. She had known Ryan for years, had met him countless times at Mark's gatherings, had even shared casual conversations about work, life, and trivial things. Yet seeing him now, alone, at her door, felt unexpectedly intimate. "Ryan, hi, what brings you here?" she asked, trying to steady her voice. "I needed to talk," he said, his eyes meeting hers with a sincerity that left her momentarily speechless. "Is this a bad time?" She studied him carefully. The familiar kindness in his eyes contrasted sharply with the nervous tension he carried. She realized she didn't know what to expect, yet she found herself stepping aside. "It's okay. Come in," she said, motioning him into the living room. Once inside, Ryan took a seat on the sofa, leaving a careful space between them. The silence stretched for a moment, heavy but not uncomfortable, as if both were weighing their words. Finally, Ryan spoke, his tone gentle. "I've been thinking about you, Lydia, about everything that happened, and I wanted to make sure you're doing okay." Her chest tightened. She hadn't expected such direct concern. She had anticipated awkward pleasantries, maybe a brief check-in from a friend, or polite distance from someone who had known her through her marriage. But Ryan's presence felt different. It was personal, attentive, and strangely reassuring. "I'm doing okay," she said softly, unsure if the words truly captured her emotions. Ryan nodded, his expression understanding. "Good. I just wanted to be sure. I know things have been complicated, and I didn't want to assume anything about how you're feeling." There was a pause, a quiet moment where the weight of the past hung between them. Lydia noticed the way his gaze softened when he looked at her, the careful consideration in every gesture, the way his hands rested calmly on his knees. He wasn't there as Mark's friend. He was there as someone who cared, who wanted to understand without judgment. "I appreciate that," she finally said. "It's been an adjustment, getting used to life after everything." Ryan leaned back slightly, a small smile touching his lips. "I can imagine. You've always been strong, Lydia. Even back then, when things weren't perfect, you handled yourself with grace. I've always admired that about you." The compliment made her blush, a warmth spreading across her cheeks. It wasn't flattery. It was genuine recognition, and it reminded her of the qualities she sometimes doubted she still possessed. "Thank you," she murmured. They began to talk, initially about neutral subjects. Work, the city, small updates about mutual friends. But gradually the conversation shifted, moving into more personal territory. Ryan asked about her hobbies, her goals, how she had been spending her time since the divorce. Lydia found herself opening up in ways she hadn't anticipated, sharing small details about her life, her routines, even her fears and small triumphs. He listened, truly listened, without interruption, without judgment. His attention felt grounding, like a steady anchor in a world that had often felt chaotic. Lydia realized, with a quiet surprise, that she felt seen, genuinely seen, in a way that she hadn't experienced in a long time. Hours seemed to pass unnoticed. The conversation flowed easily, punctuated by laughter, shared memories, and quiet reflections. She caught herself noticing the subtle nuances, the way he leaned slightly forward when she spoke, the gentle tilt of his head when he was thinking, the warmth in his eyes that lingered just a moment too long. Each detail chipped away at the careful walls she had built around her heart, walls she hadn't realized were still so fragile. Eventually, the hour grew late, and Ryan stood to leave. Lydia walked him to the door, feeling a strange reluctance she didn't understand. "Thank you for coming," she said, her voice almost a whisper. Ryan smiled, his expression soft but thoughtful. "I'm glad I did. I hope we can do this again sometime, if you're okay with it." She nodded, trying to put her feelings into words but failing. "I'd like that," she said finally. After he left, Lydia closed the door and leaned against it, her mind racing. She had expected a casual visit, maybe a friendly check-in, but this had been something different, a connection she hadn't anticipated, a warmth she hadn't realized she was missing. She felt a curious mix of emotions: surprise, comfort, anticipation, and a faint stirring of something she couldn't name. Sitting back on the sofa, she stared at the empty space where he had stood, the quiet of her home now filled with the echo of his presence. She realized with an unfamiliar pang that this visit had shifted something in her, a subtle, undeniable recognition that life could still surprise her, that the future might hold more than solitude, and that perhaps Ryan was a part of that future in ways she couldn't yet fully understand. That night, Lydia went to bed thinking about him, about the gentle way he had arrived in her life, unannounced yet significant. The quiet room no longer felt empty. Instead, it felt full of possibilities, the beginning of something she hadn't dared to hope for, and the subtle promise that love could emerge again, even in the most unexpected ways. And as she drifted off to sleep, she whispered to herself almost shyly, maybe this is the start of something new. The next morning, Lydia woke with a mixture of curiosity and unease. Ryan's visit the night before had lingered in her mind like a soft echo, stirring emotions she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. She tried to focus on her work, making coffee and checking emails, but her thoughts kept returning to him, the way he had looked at her, the calm in his voice, the way he had made her feel seen. She realized with a start that it was more than appreciation or gratitude. It was something tender and unexpected, a warmth she hadn't felt since before her divorce. Over the following weeks, Ryan's visits became a gentle rhythm in her life. He didn't come every day, only occasionally, as if giving her space while still finding ways to stay present. Sometimes he arrived with a cup of coffee, or a pastry he knew she liked, or just to sit and talk. Lydia began to anticipate these moments, noticing the small details that had always existed but now carried weight. The slight hesitation in his movements, the way he remembered her favorite chair, the quiet laughter that escaped him when a story amused him. It was during one of these afternoons that Lydia realized just how much she had begun to rely on him emotionally. They were organizing her living room, putting books back on the shelves and dusting off old frames, when she found a photograph from her early days with Mark. She held it gently, tracing the edges with her fingers. "I used to think I'd never move past all of this," she admitted softly, almost to herself. Ryan looked up from the stack of books he was holding. "Move past what?" he asked, genuinely curious. "This," she said, nodding toward the photograph. "My marriage, my divorce, all of it. I thought I'd carry it forever, like a shadow that would never leave." He paused, his gaze steady on her. "Lydia, life doesn't always follow the path we imagine. Sometimes it takes us places we never expected, and the shadows, they fade, especially when we allow someone to stand with us in the light." Her chest tightened at his words. There was an honesty there that couldn't be ignored, a quiet encouragement that made her heart ache in a good way. She smiled faintly, feeling a mixture of relief and anticipation. "I think," I'm ready for that, she whispered. Their conversations deepened naturally over time. They moved beyond casual talk about work or mutual friends to matters of the heart, fears, regrets, and hopes for the future. Lydia found herself sharing things she hadn't spoken about with anyone in years. Her anxieties about trust, the loneliness she sometimes felt in her own home, her dreams for a life that was fully her own. Ryan listened with a patience and attentiveness that made her feel safe, as if no thought she had was too small or insignificant. One evening, as they sat on the balcony sipping tea, Ryan asked about her ambitions, the ones she had abandoned during her marriage. "Do you still want to write, Lydia?" he asked gently. She nodded, a smile tugging at her lips. "I do. I've been scared to start, afraid it might fail or feel meaningless." Ryan reached across and lightly brushed his hand against hers. "You'll never know if it's meaningful until you try, and I think anything you create will be full of the honesty and heart you carry." Her heart fluttered. The touch was brief, almost accidental, but it sent a wave of warmth through her. She realized, with sudden clarity, that Ryan's presence in her life was no longer simply comforting. It was stirring feelings she had thought were long buried. She was beginning to see him not just as her ex-husband's friend, but as someone who could occupy a space in her heart that had once seemed closed forever. There were small, almost imperceptible moments that brought this realization into focus. The way Ryan would pause to listen to her stories, leaning in just slightly, the faint smile that appeared whenever she shared a memory, the way he remembered details about her life that she had casually mentioned weeks before. Each act was gentle, unassuming, yet it built a connection that felt both natural and profound. One rainy afternoon, as they sat in her living room with the soft patter of rain against the windows, Lydia caught herself staring at him for longer than necessary. He was adjusting a stack of papers, completely unaware of her gaze. She felt a mix of emotions, admiration, longing, and a curiosity she hadn't dared to acknowledge before. "Ryan," she began, her voice tentative. He looked up, his eyes meeting hers. "Yes, I didn't expect this. I didn't expect to feel this way again," she admitted, her cheeks warming. He set the papers down and leaned back slightly, a soft smile forming. "Neither did I," he said quietly. "But sometimes the heart knows before the mind catches up." Lydia's breath caught. There was truth in his words, a gentle confirmation of the feelings she had been trying to suppress. She realized that the connection between them had grown organically, quietly, and that it was real. The possibility of love had re-entered her life, but this time it was different. It was built on trust, understanding, and months of shared moments, not on infatuation or impulsive decisions. Over the next days, Lydia found herself reflecting on the subtle changes within her. She smiled more easily, laughed more freely, and felt a warmth in her chest whenever Ryan's presence was near. It wasn't a rush of passion. It was a quiet, enduring sense of companionship, of belonging, and of hope. She recognized that she had been lonely, but not because she was unworthy of love, because she had not yet allowed herself to see it in the right place. Ryan continued to visit, always gently, never rushing or pressuring. And with each meeting, Lydia noticed a growing sense of ease, a feeling that perhaps life had not closed the door on happiness after all. She began to look forward to their conversations, to the shared silences that spoke volumes, to the gentle comfort of a presence that was becoming essential to her life. One evening, as they walked through the park together, the sun setting behind the trees, Lydia felt the pull of unspoken words. The air was soft and warm, filled with the scent of blooming flowers and the distant laughter of children. Ryan slowed his pace and looked at her, his eyes steady and searching. "Lydia, I want you to know something," he said softly. Her heart raced. "What is it?" "I care about you. More than I should have, perhaps, given the past. But I can't ignore it anymore." Lydia's breath caught. She felt relief, joy, and a quiet fear all at once. She realized, finally, that the feelings she had been nurturing in secret were reciprocated. And in that moment, the tentative friendship and growing bond between them shifted into something deeper, something that hinted at love, quietly emerging, waiting for them to acknowledge it fully. That night, Lydia lay in bed thinking of him, the words he had spoken, the comfort he had brought. She realized she was ready to explore these emotions, to allow herself the possibility of a love that had arrived unexpectedly, quietly, and with gentle patience. And for the first time in a long time, she felt the thrill of hope, of a heart opening again, and the anticipation of a journey that was just beginning. The weeks following Ryan's confession brought a whirlwind of emotions for Lydia. Their growing connection, once subtle and comforting, now carried a weight of unspoken possibility. Each encounter seemed to hum with tension, a quiet anticipation that both thrilled and terrified her. She found herself replaying his words in her mind over and over. I care about you. More than I should have, perhaps, given the past. But I can't ignore it anymore. At first, Lydia tried to suppress the feelings. She reminded herself of the complications. Ryan was her ex-husband's best friend, and their history, though indirect, was complex. She feared judgment, the whispers of friends, and the unsettling idea of crossing boundaries that had always seemed clear. Yet, every time she saw him, every time his hand brushed hers, every time his eyes met hers with that steady, honest warmth, the resistance weakened. One rainy afternoon, Ryan stopped by her apartment with a bag of groceries, a small gesture that had become routine but no less significant. Lydia greeted him with a smile, her heart thudding as she noticed the subtle shift in his presence. More intentional, more aware. You didn't have to bring all that, she said, glancing at the bag filled with her favorite ingredients. I wanted to, Ryan replied, his voice calm but firm. It's small, but it's my way of saying, I care. Lydia felt a rush of emotions, warmth, gratitude, and a delicate flutter she had long forgotten. They unpacked the groceries together, sharing light conversation, but beneath it flowed an undercurrent of intimacy neither could ignore. The air between them was charged, yet gentle, respectful, and patient. Later that evening, as they prepared dinner together, Lydia watched Ryan move around her kitchen. The familiarity of his presence, once casual and friendly, now felt essential, grounding. Every laugh, every glance, every shared task carried a new significance. She realized that she didn't want him to leave, didn't want the evening to end, didn't want the moment to dissolve into the ordinary again. After dinner, they moved to the balcony, the city lights sparkling below, and rain gently tapping against the glass. Silence settled between them, comfortable yet loaded with unspoken truths. Lydia felt the conflict deep within her, the fear of vulnerability against the yearning to embrace something new, the tension between caution and desire. She turned to Ryan, searching for reassurance, for guidance, for a sign that it was safe to follow her heart. Ryan met her gaze steadily, sensing her hesitation. Lydia, I need to tell you something, he began, his voice soft yet unwavering. I can't keep pretending I don't feel this way anymore. I care about you, deeply, and I know it's complicated, but I can't hide it. Her hands trembled slightly. The confession, while anticipated, struck her with an intensity that made her breath catch. She had longed to hear these words, feared them, and yet here they were, spoken aloud with sincerity and care. Ryan, I've been feeling the same, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't want to admit it, not even to myself. He reached across the small table, placing his hand lightly over hers. The touch was deliberate but tender, affirming without demanding, a silent promise of patience and understanding. Lydia felt a warmth spread through her chest, a sensation that was equal parts relief and anticipation. The bond they had nurtured quietly over weeks had shifted into something undeniable, something that could no longer be ignored. Yet, even as her heart responded, Lydia's mind wrestled with uncertainty. What if pursuing this connection caused complications? What if she misread the signs? What if it was too soon, or too much, or too unconventional? These thoughts swirled, a tempest of caution threatening to overshadow the delicate hope blossoming between them. Ryan seemed to sense her hesitation. I'm not asking for anything right now, he said gently, his eyes searching hers. I just want you to know how I feel. We can take this slowly, one step at a time. No pressure. No rush. The reassurance was exactly what she needed. She realized that the depth of her feelings didn't require immediate action, only acknowledgement, understanding, and patience. With that clarity, a sense of calm settled over her, replacing the storm of doubt that had haunted her moments before. She nodded, a small smile forming. I think I can do that," she said, squeezing his hand lightly. Over the following days, their connection deepened through shared experiences and quiet moments. They went on walks through the park, watched sunsets from her balcony, and shared conversations that flowed effortlessly from humor to heartache to dreams for the future. Each moment reinforced the bond they had formed, a connection built not on passion alone, but on trust, understanding, and mutual respect. One evening, Ryan suggested they try something new, a small hike in the hills outside the city. The journey was casual, yet every step together felt symbolic, as if they were exploring not just the trail but the possibilities of a future together. The fresh air, the sound of leaves rustling, the way their hands brushed as they navigated uneven terrain, all contributed to a sense of intimacy that was both exhilarating and comforting. At the peak, overlooking the city lights twinkling below, Lydia found herself speaking honestly, vulnerably. "I never thought I'd feel this again," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Not after everything. I didn't think love like this could happen to me." Ryan turned to her, his expression soft and earnest. "Love doesn't always follow the path we expect. Sometimes it finds us in the quiet moments, when we least anticipate it, with people we never imagined would matter so much." Her heart leapt. The words resonated, a truth she had only just begun to understand. In Ryan, she had discovered more than companionship. She had discovered patience, sincerity, and the courage to open her heart again. The conflict she had felt wasn't gone entirely, but it no longer paralyzed her. It existed alongside hope, anticipation, and the gentle thrill of possibility. Returning home, they sat on her porch in the evening, the night air cool and fragrant. The silence between them was not awkward. It was comfortable, a space where they could simply exist together. Lydia rested her head on his shoulder, a gesture that spoke volumes without words. "I think I'm ready," she murmured, almost to herself. Ryan's hand found hers, lacing their fingers together. "I'm here, and I'll wait for as long as you need." For the first time in years, Lydia felt the storm of her past receding. The fear, the doubt, the hesitation, they were still present, yes, but tempered by trust and affection. She realized that love didn't have to be immediate or perfect. It only needed to be real, nurtured, and approached with honesty. And in that realization, Lydia felt a quiet certainty that she was on the threshold of something extraordinary, a love she hadn't expected, yet one that felt destined to grow. As she drifted to sleep that night, her mind replayed the events of the day, the touch of his hand, the warmth in his eyes, the gentle acceptance he offered her. She felt a sense of anticipation, not fear, for the journey that lay ahead. The bond between them was no longer simply a growing friendship. It was a connection poised on the edge of love, waiting for the moment they would fully acknowledge it. And Lydia, with her heart open but guarded, knew she was ready to take that step, slowly, deliberately, but without hesitation. Ryan was no longer just her ex-husband's friend. He was becoming the one she could trust, the one she could care for deeply, and perhaps, the one she could love. The days that followed were a delicate dance of emotions for Lydia and Ryan. The acknowledgement of their feelings had brought both relief and tension. Each encounter carried a quiet thrill, yet neither wanted to rush the process. Lydia found herself waking with anticipation, a sense of possibility that she hadn't felt in years. Her heart, once cautious and guarded, now seemed willing to embrace the unknown. Ryan's presence in her life had become a comforting rhythm. They shared mornings over coffee, afternoons walking through the park, and evenings on the balcony talking about dreams, fears, and small joys. Every moment was infused with a tenderness that neither took for granted. The gentle intimacy of shared space, soft laughter, and thoughtful conversation allowed their bond to grow naturally, without pressure or expectation. One afternoon, Lydia invited Ryan over for lunch. She had tried a new recipe, nervously hoping he would like it. As he tasted the food, his face lit up with genuine delight. "This is amazing, Lydia," he said, his eyes twinkling. "You've outdone yourself." She laughed softly, feeling a warmth in her chest. "I wanted to do something special," she admitted. "For us." Ryan's expression softened, and he reached across the table to lightly touch her hand. "Every moment with you feels special," he said. "I didn't realize how much I needed this, how much I needed you, until now." Her heart fluttered. The words were sincere, deliberate, and filled with a vulnerability that matched her own. She realized then that the connection between them had shifted from tentative affection to a deeper, more enduring attachment. It was no longer just about possibility. It was about choice. Each of them was choosing the other, moment by moment, with awareness and intention. That evening, they decided to take a walk through the city streets, the glow of streetlights reflecting off wet pavement after a light rain. The air was crisp, filled with the scent of rain and the faint aroma of cafes and bakeries. Their conversation flowed easily, moving from lighthearted banter to more personal reflections. "I've been thinking a lot about the past," Lydia said quietly, "about everything that happened with Mark and how I let myself believe that happiness had passed me by." Ryan listened attentively, walking close beside her, his hand brushing hers occasionally. "The past shapes us," he said gently, "but it doesn't define the future. You have the right to happiness, Lydia, and you don't have to chase it alone." She felt a lump in her throat. The tenderness in his voice, the sincerity of his gaze, made her realize just how deeply she had come to care for him. "I want to believe that," she whispered. "You don't have to just believe it," Ryan said, his hand finding hers fully now, fingers intertwining naturally. "We can live it together." The simplicity of his words struck her. It wasn't grand gestures or dramatic declarations. It was quiet, steady, intentional. And in that moment, Lydia understood that love didn't have to be loud or hurried to be real. It could be patient, tender, and enduring. Over the next few days, they continued to explore this new chapter of their relationship. There were small adventures, visiting the farmer's market, cooking meals together, sharing favorite books and movies. Each activity, ordinary in appearance, carried extraordinary significance for them. Every shared smile, every gentle touch, every thoughtful conversation reinforced the trust and affection that had blossomed quietly over weeks. One evening, as the sun set in brilliant shades of pink and orange, Ryan took Lydia to a small hill overlooking the city. The view was breathtaking, the city lights beginning to twinkle like stars below them. They sat side by side, shoulders brushing, hands clasped together. "I never thought I'd find this," Lydia said softly, her voice trembling with emotion. "Not after everything. I didn't think I could feel this way again." Ryan turned to her, his eyes reflecting the fading sunlight. "Neither did I," he admitted. "But sometimes life surprises us. And sometimes, the people we least expect become the ones we need the most." Her chest tightened with emotion. The words resonated deeply, affirming the quiet hope she had nurtured for weeks. She realized that she wasn't just in love with Ryan. She trusted him. She relied on him emotionally, and she wanted him as a part of her life in a way that was permanent, not fleeting. That night they returned to Lydia's apartment, the quiet intimacy of their routine wrapping around them like a comforting blanket. They made tea, sat on the balcony, and watched the city lights reflect in the distance. The conversation was gentle, filled with reflection and soft laughter. They didn't need grand gestures. Their connection was rooted in honesty, care, and shared understanding. At one point, Ryan turned to her, his expression serious but tender. "Lydia, I want you to know that whatever happens, I'm here. For you, with you, I'm not going anywhere." Tears pricked her eyes, and she squeezed his hand tightly. "I feel the same, Ryan," she whispered. "I've waited a long time to feel safe with someone again. And now, I do, with you." They sat in silence for a while, letting the words settle between them. The night was calm, filled with quiet reassurance and unspoken promises. Lydia felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years, a deep, abiding certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be. In the days that followed, they began to speak openly about their future. Not in grand, overwhelming terms, but with small, meaningful steps, planning dinners together, discussing shared hobbies, and simply enjoying the comfort of one another's presence. Every choice reinforced their bond, building a foundation rooted in respect, affection, and mutual understanding. The emotional intimacy they had nurtured allowed them to navigate life's challenges together. Minor misunderstandings were met with patience, and differences in opinion became opportunities for growth rather than conflict. Lydia found herself laughing more easily, worrying less, and feeling more alive than she had in years. Ryan, too, seemed lighter, more present, and profoundly happy in the shared simplicity of their connection. Eventually, Lydia realized that the hesitancy she had felt at the beginning, the fear of judgment, the worry about the past, the uncertainty of emotions, had transformed. It had been replaced with trust, clarity, and a quiet joy. She understood that love didn't have to be dramatic or complicated. It could be patient, tender, and intentional. One evening, as they sat side by side on her sofa, watching the soft glow of the city lights through the window, Lydia rested her head on Ryan's shoulder. He wrapped his arm around her gently, and they sat in a comfortable silence, the rhythm of their breathing and the warmth between them speaking volumes. "I think this is just the beginning," Lydia murmured, her voice filled with hope. Ryan kissed the top of her head softly. "It is," he said. "A new beginning. For both of us." And in that moment, Lydia felt the weight of the past lift. The fear, the doubt, the loneliness, all had been replaced by trust, love, and the promise of a shared future. She realized that sometimes life's most unexpected turns led to the deepest happiness, and that the bond she shared with Ryan was more than a second chance, it was the start of something. Bye-bye, the end.